All right, and we're live, folks. Thank you for bearing with us. I know it took a little bit of while, but we got it sorted out. Had a few little minor technical difficulties, but welcome to today's Dapr community call. My name is Cecil Phillip. I'm one of the community managers here at Dapr. If this is your first time listening to one of our community calls, welcome. What we do here is talk about a lot of the interesting things that are happening around the world of Dapr within the community and the ecosystem. We'll usually have some presentations from again some folks from within the ecosystem, and share some links about some of the things that are happening again within the world of Dapr. So today we have a interesting agenda today. We got a couple of presenters. So first, we're going to have Mike is going to talk to us a little bit about what's happening with Dapr 114 and the RC that's going to be coming out soon. Then Josh is going to talk to us about streaming subscriptions. That should be pretty fun. And then Biljan, he's going to talk to us about Dapr Component Builder in Conductor. So that sounds pretty interesting. So why don't we just go ahead and get to it? Mike, I'm going to bring your screen up. I'm going to take my screen down, and then I'm going to let you take it up.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. Just apologies in advance. There is some building works nearby, and it might get a little bit loud. I'll try and eliminate it as much as I can. So, hi, I'm Mike, the release manager for 114. We've got a few primary headline features coming along with 114. I've listed them here on as the headline features. They are the distributed scheduler service alongside job building block. We've also got actor namespacing, so that's a hotly requested feature that's now going to be available as of 114. We will be completing an OpenTelemetry 1.25 upgrade to support the increased observability. It was mentioned in 113, we had a proposal to default to low cardinality metrics. However, we've now improved them, but we will be remaining on increased cardinality as a default as of 114. And we've also got streaming subscriptions, which will be mentioned or described in detail by Josh. So I'll start off with a little bit about the distributed scheduler service and building block. This aims to improve or orchestrate jobs that we have in the back end. At the moment, for the workflow service, we're relying on the actor reminder ecosystem, and the distributed scheduler is aiming to increase the performance and also lost my train of thought, and improve performance and scalability through a new service which will be rolling out and deployed as a scheduler. The next slide is a big picture of how the scheduler will be deployed. The idea is that there will be a separate API which you can communicate to the scheduler. You can both schedule, get, and delete jobs. So we at the moment, as mentioned, the workflows building block is built on top of actor reminders, which at the moment does have a massive scale limitation in terms of actor reminder activations. We've also got the pub sub building block, which doesn't have the option at the moment to have delayed scheduling of particular jobs, so you can't fire at a particular time and whatnot. The scheduler isn't an executor, it's purely an orchestrator for jobs at a later date. There is going to be particular implementation details with regards to how you'll be able to schedule a job. It is fairly simple. You'll be able to use language like daily, hourly, minutely to indicate how long a job should run for. Sorry, how long a job should be scheduled to run for. We also have there is a cron implementation as well. It is a 6 space separated field implementation of the cron language, and this will be exposed to the user through the sidecar with HTTP and gRPC API. So moving on, we also have actor namespacing. So the way that actors can now be namespaced are in memory. The Raft-based store has been adapted inside the placement to group data by namespaces. Placement tables are going to be kept per namespace, and sidecars in a particular namespace will only receive placement tables for their own namespace. Something that will be kept backwards compatible will be that any placements that don't declare a namespace via TLS will also be assigned to the empty namespace, which is a backwards compatible feature. OpenTelemetry 1.25 support. This is, as of code freeze, we have not merged this yet, but this is going to be a P0, so a blocker to release. We are aiming to merge this as soon as possible. Appreciate it is a blocker for those of you using cloud events at the moment. I don't have much visibility into the cardinality of the metrics, but there has been some discussion about whether we are going to be keeping high cardinality metrics as a default for 1.14. The idea was that there's no overall right or wrong decision when it comes to whether we should default to low or high cardinality metrics. However, we should provide a simple switch, as it were, to turn off high cardinality metrics if they are not required or there is excessive overhead, but also providing better path matching and regex support to those of the power users that need metrics to support their needs. And as of 1.14, there's going to be improved metrics path matching. This is without regex support. And streaming subscriptions, I shall leave this to Josh to pick up as the spearhead of PubSub.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Mike. We do have a handful of questions coming in. And let's see if we can get to a couple of them before we switch over and have Josh come on. So one question we're going to look at first. This one's coming in from Peter from YouTube. Peter's asking, he says, I'm wondering how the new job scheduler differs from using actors, timers, reminders. Is it sort of a facade over to make those things a little simpler?
So I have not worked in implementing the scheduler itself. However, it's using an etcd as a sort of cron-like orchestrator. It's not a facade or wrapper over timers or actor reminders.
Okay. And
yeah, and I can speak to that a little bit. Josh here, sure. Maintainer. Yeah, so the scheduler as of 1.14 will not be replacing reminders, as in the existing reminder implementation will stay the same. However, you would be able to change your reminders implementation over to the new scheduler service, which is more performant through our performance testing, but that will be a preview feature that you do have to opt into. So there is no data migration path forward for this. You will have data loss if you are actively using reminders in production. You should not enable this preview feature if that's what you're doing when you upgrade. But long term, that is what we will be moving to, as it is the more kind of performant implementation. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Josh.
And the API is all the same. Sorry. Yes. And also the other part of the question, the API stays the same in terms of the active reminder. Yeah.
Awesome. And the API is the same. All right. Let's do one more question, and then Josh, we'll switch over to you. This question is coming in from James. James is asking, I heard the PubSub component mentioned around the distributed scheduler. One of the use cases my team has is to process the events in the future, i.e. process it 5 minutes from now. Is this going to be possible?
That seems like the exact use case that this was designed for in the implementation. Sorry, the design phase. At the moment, I don't believe there is a binding per se to. Correct me if I'm wrong here, Josh. To initiate the PubSub without logic written yourself. So it's a cron that will initiate, let's say, 5 minutes from now, but that will invoke your app, I believe.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, so that is correct. So in 1.14, you would be able to implement this logic yourself, as in you could, invoke yourself to then publish the message. However, delayed PubSub, it's almost certainly going to be 1.15, and in fact, I have a nearly 100% completed branch implementing delayed PubSub. It's just, there's no way that's getting into 1.14, unfortunately, but in theory, all the work is done, and it certainly works, and it's tested. But yes, it's not been pushed up. When being part of 1.14, unfortunately. But indeed, the way that scheduler is designed is that the kind of internal storage of the concept of this kind of job thing that we have that has some kind of time associated with it and should be triggered and has some kind of period to it. That whatever feature you can think of, which is got some kind of connection to time, we'd be certainly interested in. And the whole point of scheduler was that, anything related to time, it would be able to support. And it's designed to be extensible and all these kinds of things. So yes, delayed PubSub is certainly probably the for next thing that will go in for scheduler. But moving forward, I'm sure there'll be other things we can think of that would be interesting to add as well.
Cool. Thank you again, Josh. No more other questions for this for now. So I think we can keep moving on. So again, thank you so much, Mike. Really appreciate it. So you just covered the 1.14 RC. Do we have any dates that we could share for that? Like timeline, like that?
There's no nothing set in stone. I am aiming to cut a release candidate that doesn't include the open telemetry support as soon as possible. We do have everything else merged. I mean, there is one further PR for the distributed scheduler upgrading a library, but I'd imagine in the next couple of days we'll get something out for you guys to try.
Okay, so pretty much we're telling folks that we could stock the repo on GitHub.
Yes, yes, at the moment, yes.
All right, great, awesome. Well, again, thank you so much, Mike. So Josh, we have you up next, and you're gonna be talking to us about streaming subscriptions. And I'm going to take off Mike's screen, and Josh, your screen is up now, and I'm going to let you take it away.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you very much. Yes, hi everyone. Josh again, me. I'm a maintainer here working on Dapr, and one of the features that we worked on in this release is something we're called streaming subscriptions. Naming is hard, but I think this is the name we came up with. So I'll talk about. I'll kind of describe what the kind of state of the world is with PubSub subscriptions and what this new type of subscriptions kind of bring to the table, why you might want to use it, and why I personally think is probably going to supersede the way you do subscriptions in Dapr moving forward forever. I can kind of foresee. So subscriptions in Dapr today, there are two ways of doing this. So the first way of doing this, if you look at the documentation, is what we call declarative. So this is where you have your YAML file or that you're committing to Kubernetes or what have you. And inside that YAML, it's going to have, what topic you're subscribing to, the route that published messages, the subscribed message are going to be sent to on your HTTP or gRPC endpoint, the pub sub you're subscribing to, dead letter topics, and there's the whole bulk pub sub configuration as well, of course. So that's one way of doing things. It's also worth noting that hot reloading of these declarative subscriptions will be available in 1.14 as a preview feature. And a lot of that work was a kind of dependency on the kind of streaming subscriptions, which will probably make more sense in a second. In any case, so that's one way of doing subscriptions today. And then the second one is the programmatic way. So I just kind of pulled up a snippet that we have in the Dapr docs. So this is JavaScript. And unlike the declarative YAML style subscription, this is where you define your subscriptions in code. It's much the same. You're effectively writing your YAML just in code, and you're saying, I'm subscribe to this, and you're going to send it to this endpoint. And then importantly, you're going to then open up a port in your code in both, to kind of consume the messages in both subscription types. You're going to open up a port, and then you're going to receive your messages from Dapr on whatever endpoints you're configuring. High level, this is kind of what the architecture looks like for that. You have Dapr that's running as a sidecar, and it's pushing messages over to your subscriber app over HTTP or gRPC. It'll be a post, HTTP, something like this, and it's pushing messages to your application. I hope you can maybe see where I'm going to go to next. So in 1.14, we have created a new API, a new subscription type that we're calling streaming subscriptions. And I don't want to get too technical, but the other two types you can think of as push, and this new method is going to be a pull-based subscription method. So under the hood, it's only implemented in gRPC today. HTTP will come in the future, but we just have gRPC implemented. What happens with streaming subscription is that your application code will be the one which makes the connection to Dapr, and it will make this initial request that I've got here. And then that side of that initial request, it's going to contain all the things that you previously had to define in your YAML or in your /subscribe server endpoint in that kind of in that JSON file. So it will contain the pub sub you want to subscribe to, blah 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 blah. Once that's gone and subscribed, you will then have a bidirectional stream between Dapr and the app. And so as you're now subscribing to a particular topic, Dapr is going to send you your pub sub messages over that stream, and then the subscribed app is going to then send the results of those process messages backwards and forwards. Now, fine, maybe that's a little bit abstract, but what's the point in doing this? Why is going from a push to a pull method important, or why would that be a good thing? Why would we want to do that? So the first thing is that, and this is why I mentioned about the hot reloading thing earlier, is by doing this method, we have a fully dynamic topic subscription at runtime. So unlike your programmatic subscriptions, for example, where you have to define your subscriptions at the top of your program, and they're going to be static, you're going to have them forever. With streaming subscriptions, you can define as many streams as you want, and you can subscribe to as many topics as you want, and you can stop them, you can start them, and you can change the topic names based on particular runtime decisions. So you can imagine if you had some kind of event-driven system where you want to on demand subscribe to particular topics as events happen and things like this. That a lot of systems want to work like that, and Dapr didn't really support that before. Even the declarative, although we now have hot reloading, that would involve updating the YAML files, or previously it would have to be the case that you'd have to restart your application altogether along with the sidecar, which is obviously bad for uptime and is very disruptive, etc. So being able to dynamically kind of subscribe to these things during runtime, I think, is really powerful. The third bullet point here, I think, can be interesting for people, and that is the fact that you don't need to have an open port on your application at all. And similarly, you don't even need to define an application on Dapr whatsoever. So if you're familiar with running the sidecar, you'll have to, particularly in self-hosted mode, or if you're running from the CLI or something like this, you'll know that you have to define your HTTP port or what protocol you're using, and how you're connecting to the app and things like this. But because it's using that pool system, you can just run, Dapr as a daemon running there, not calling out to anything, and then on demand you just go ahead and start calling that Dapr, which again I think is quite powerful. You can even imagine, for development scenarios or something like this, you could just have a long-running Dapr process running on your laptop or something like this, and you're running an integration tests and things like this. They can just go ahead and hit that long-running Dapr. And yeah, I think that's a kind of soft lifestyle or quality of life improvement. I think it's not necessarily obvious, but I think that'd be quite cool. And then the last one is there's no subscription configuration at all. So yeah, unlike the declarative YAML and the declarative approach, which is not committed necessarily next to a code, or it has a whole different CI/CD pipeline and things like this. You won't have those those kind of GitOps problems and things like that. I think I have one more slide. So we have, the API is completely finished. The gRPC API is completely finished and implemented and merged. It'll be 1.14. There's no preview feature that you need to enable to use this feature. It's an alpha API. So that is that caveat, that it is an alpha API, so there could be breaking changes in the future potentially. We try not to do that, and don't necessarily foresee that happening, but it could very well happen. It's a new API. That is how our APIs, how the lifecycle of our APIs work, as we introduce them and then eventually graduate them to fully supported. But typically, you'll find that your SDK that you're using is going to kind of abstract that away from you anyway. So it's not kind of, as a developer user facing, that's not too much of a concern. But yes, this is an alpha API. So I've got a code snippet on the right here. We have, as of today, an implementation for the Go SDK. Of course, we want to support all of the SDKs. And as I said at the beginning, I think this would be quite a popular feature. And I'm kind of expecting this to kind of overtake the other two types of subscription methods, just because it is a lot more approachable, and I think a lot more powerful too. So I think it does kind of beat out the other two potentially. We'll see. In any case, yes, we have the Go SDK implemented today. Trying to look at maybe getting a .NET implementation done as well, depending on how good I can get my .NET upskilling work. But yes, just to kind of run through the code, like, it's super simple, and I think probably what you always probably expect. We have two styles in Go SDK. I'm just showing one here where we give it a function as a parameter. So you can see here that I'm subscribing with a handler, and I'm subscribing to this pub sub on this topic. And when I receive messages, you're going to call this event handler. I mean, kind of feels like it's state of the obvious. Like, this is how it should always work. So yeah, it kind of obvious, but yeah, I think it's quite a nice implementation, and yeah, I think quite powerful. Yes, maybe a few caveats that might be interesting, but semi-implementation details. You do need to return the response status. You can imagine before it was a unary implementation, i.e. it was the push method, Dapr is sending you HTTP or gRPC unary calls. That response code that you respond to those unary calls would be the result, the process result of that message, right? If you need an error message or things like this, and it goes to the dead letter, it gets retried from your resiliency policies and things like this. So before, it was fairly implicit what it was very, very implicit to process a message. Now it's less implicit. You have to be more explicit because of the bidirectional nature of this API. We have to return the process message result back as a separate gRPC message back to Dapr. So all of that is to say that you do need to, have this kind of return response status success at the end of your handler, or drop message or whatever it is. And similarly, you do need to have some kind of stop that client call, because again, it is a streaming API, so it is long running. So it's a long running connection to Dapr. So yeah, we need to make sure we're cleaning those up. And you can imagine, if you're streaming, thousands of different topics, if that's something you wanted to do, great. I'm confident you can do that. But yes, if you're churning lots, which I recommend you can do, don't forget to stop them because you'll obviously be creating lots of subscriptions, and depending on your broker, that might be problematic on Kafka or whatever it might be. And so yeah, I think that's everything I want to cover and all my slides. So yeah, I don't know if there's any questions, and if not, I can hand it back.
I just realized I was muted. There we go. Yeah, there is a question. I actually have a bunch of my own questions, but I'm going to let the community go first.
Sure.
Peter's asking a question on YouTube. His question is, so how does this relate to the pub/sub component which defines the broker connection information? i.e., can we define new brokers dynamically as well?
Yeah, that's a good question. So in Dapr, a pub/sub, the kind of pub/sub configuration, as it were, is broken up into these two pieces, right? So we have this, we have a pub/sub component, which is strictly a component, and that is describing. I like to think as components. I kind of see them as kind of gateway APIs almost. And your pub/sub component is describing how you're connecting to your pub/sub, whether it be Kafka or whatever else it might be. And there you're describing how you want to consume that broker and your consumer groups and whatever else. That is a strictly pub/sub component thing. The second piece of it is the subscription piece, which is adding new subscriptions to a pub/sub broker. So that's the way that those kind of two things are separated. So what I've talked about today is strictly talking about that subscription piece. It's not talking about how we want to talk to the broker, as it were. We're talking about what topics we want to subscribe to. Now, can we define new brokers dynamically as well? Absolutely. So as of 1.13, I believe it was, we added support for hot reloading of components. So if you enable that preview feature, that will come out of preview feature eventually, potentially, or at least it will come out of preview, but not necessarily enabled by default. Anyway, that's a larger discussion for another day. Yeah, so you can enable hot reloading of that pub/sub component YAML, as it were, and editing that will make it dynamic, and you can make changes and things like this. However, it's well worth knowing that whilst the subscriptions here, if I create and remove subscriptions, that's not going to affect other subscriptions, right? They're different objects, as it were. If I dynamically change my pub/sub, well, that's going to close the pub/sub connection completely and then bring it back up with a new one. So that will affect the other the existing subscriptions, right? Even though it will resubscribe with what subscriptions we have, it is, if you do dynamically update your pub/sub, you will have a downtime, as it were, for the subscriptions that you have live. Now, how long is that? How long is that downtime? Less than a second, maybe a couple seconds, depends on the broker. Depends if you change the YAML into something that errors, which, yeah, and then you'd have a longer downtime. So yes, maybe it's a few seconds. Maybe that's important for you, maybe it's not. Yeah, just worth noting. Hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah, Peter, hopefully that answers that part of it, and let us know if it does not. Another question from Peter, and this is actually something I was curious about as well. Like, what happens if the connection is broken? Particularly with like this new push-based model. Like, what does resiliency look like? Like, how do we think about that?
Yeah, it's a good question. So this is a SDK implementation detail. So a broken connection is a kind of gRPC library concern. So first of all, what does it mean for a connection to be broken, i.e. where the HTTP keeper lives, did some of those fail or something like this, and then the gRPC library determines that connection has broken, and how does that then get represented in the SDK? So I'd say that is certainly an SDK concern. So yes, and that'll be a per SDK kind of design decision, I suppose. Obviously, different programming languages have different styles and different ways they approach things. Yes, yeah.
So now, from that perspective, it would make sense to wrap your calls or your your callbacks in some type of resiliency handler, right? Like, so I know in .NET there's Poly, and I'm sure within Go that like there's its own mechanism to handle those types of things.
Precisely. Yes. Yes. Exactly.
Got it. Okay. So okay. So Josh, I know you had mentioned that this is an alpha feature coming out in 1.14. Is it going to be behind a flag, or because I know some of the features are behind feature flags, or is it just going to be available for people to start using?
Yeah. So this will be available for people to start using. Unless someone suddenly just changed their minds, but that's how it's currently committed in the code. It will be, you can use the API. The API is just labeled alpha, but yeah, it will be on by default, and you can't turn it off. It is just another endpoint in the Dapr server, right? So yes, the API will be enabled by default. Nothing needed that side.
Got it. All right. Well, again, Josh, thank you again so much. If folks still have more questions about streaming subscriptions, feel free to drop them in the chat. If you're watching this after the fact, again, make sure you head over to our Discord channel, and a lot of the conversations will be continuing to happen over there. So, Josh, I'm going to take your screen off, and so now next we have Biljan, and he's going to be talking to us about the Dapr component builder inside of Conductor. So Biljan, I'm going to let you take it away. Go ahead and share your screen, and then we can pull it up, and we can have you, take it over.
Oh, thanks, Phyllis. Great to be here and presenting for the first time. So I want to share a feature we've added to Conductor that I think will be super beneficial to the community here. And that's the component builder. So quickly, one of the things that I like about Dapr is the components and how it abstracts the whole complexity of connecting to various backing services, right? Today, there are over 115 components, and from the APIs, you can use those just by using a logical name. And the whole complexity of actually connecting to that API, authenticating, is hidden in the component definition files. The way to use those component definitions, at least how I've been doing that, is going to Dapr documentation, right? Going to references, component spec, pick the components you want to use, such as a PubSub, let's say Apache Kafka, and use this to figure out what are the fields to add into your component definition so that you can successfully connect and configure the component, right, to get to the desired behavior. And for example, for Kafka, I think there are over 50 properties defining from the behavior of the Kafka client to different authentication profiles. And each of these authentication profiles then also have different set of fields. Some of those fields have default values, some are required, some are optional. Some of those, like schema registry, they go in together in groups, etc. And typically you would copy this into the default component definitions you get and continue from there. And we thought at Dapr how we can make that, how we can streamline this experience, and created a component builder. Component builder is part of Dapr Conductor, which is a SaaS service for managing and operating Dapr on Kubernetes. The good thing about the component builder is once you sign up and log in, there is nothing to install, right? Even if you don't have any clusters connected to Conductor, you can start using the component builder and configure different components. Once you come to component builder, you'll notice that it's still in active development. So there are some rough edges, and maybe you can see I am presenting this from our development environment. And if you try it out and see something that's not as you wish, please let me know, and we'll make it better. And the whole idea is you have this web-based wizard that will guide you to configure a component. And at the end, you get the component definition, and you can use it on your local project or contribute to the pipeline. The first thing you have to do is select the component type you want to use. So, such as let's use the canonical one. When I select pops up, I get to see all the components that are available in this category. We'll see the stable ones, if there are any alpha, beta, and different versions if they're available. This feature today relies on Dapr component schemas. So anything that has a schema, and over half of those at this point will be listed here. I have a Minikube cluster with Redis installed, so I'll try to connect to that one and configure the component definition for it. So pops up and Redis. When I go to next, you'll see that in this case, it has skipped the authentication profile because the Redis component, PubSub component, doesn't have different profiles. The authentication is down to the Redis password, but I'll use another component of that to show you how the authentication profile works. On this screen, you'll see all the options. On the left are all the required ones, so let's fill those, like a Dapr demo. If you fill up something that's not valid, you get the instant feedback. I've installed Redis using Helm charts, and that's the URL I get. Same one you'll get if you use the Dapr CLI. Here you can see the other required field, the Redis password. If I can type the password here or use the secret that's being created by the Helm charts. I'll use the secret references. The secret is called Dapr dev Redis, and the key is Dapr password. So these are all the required fields. On the right-hand side, you'll see all the optional fields. And for Redis, you see there are plenty. Let's try like the retry one. You can search those. And once I add a new field, you'll see that it tells me the default value here. You'll get some indication from the schema, a description, an example value. If I try to type something else with letters, it won't let me. The only thing I can type is something in the right value. And you can populate your schema from this. Continuing, next step is to scope this component, which is purely optional thing to do, but it's a good practice. Well, one thing Conductor will let me use, if I have any Kubernetes clusters with Dapr, I can actually browse those and select the namespaces and the apps that I want to scope this component. I can leave it to all apps or scope it to specific app, or if you wish, you can completely skip this step and not scope it here. And in the final screen, I get the YAML file based on my configuration. You see, it is a PubSub Redis component that's been scoped to the namespace, and the app is picked, and the very minimal authentication configuration. At this point, I can edit this if I want more, or go back and change something. I will just download it and we'll try it in a second. Before trying it out, I just want to show you how the authentication profile works. So if I go, for example, for the Kafka component, Apache Kafka, in case of Apache Kafka, it has multiple ways to authenticate. And here I can see all of those, like you can use for demo purposes, no authentication, or you can use probably the most popular one, the SSL authentication mechanism. And here are all the fields that are required for this authentication. Again, anything that's sensitive is masked, and also you can refer those from a secret if you wish. I'm not going to configure this one as it's very similar steps. Let me try this new file I've just downloaded. Actually, I have a typo. It has T at the end. It doesn't matter. K apply -f this, and that's been applied to my Kubernetes cluster. And in Conductor, actually, if I want, I can see now this component has been detected, and it has been performed initialization check, saying that it's actually valid and it can connect to Redis cluster on my Kubernetes installation. There are other things in Conductor, like you can see if there are anything that's that's not great with that component definition, where it has not been scoped, or if there are other best practices that are missing, we can see those in Advisor, and maybe I can show that some other time. And finally, this component builder, we described how it works. There is a blog post and a video. You can give it a try. I've added the links here. And yeah, give it a try and let us know whether it works and what can be done better.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that. So folks, if you have any questions regarding the component builder in Conductor or anything of the sort, let us know. Again, a lot of these conversations are happening inside of Discord as well. So if you don't get a chance to talk to us here, feel free to head over to Discord and let us know what you think about it. But with that being said, I'm going to switch over. I'm going to put my screen back on, and then let's take a look at some of the. Trying to share my screen. There we go. All right, let's take a look at wrong screen. Let's take a look at some of the stuff that's been going on in the community for the last couple of weeks or so with regards to Dapr. Now, our friend Wilson Santos actually wrote this blog post talking about Dapr and Azure Container Apps. Yeah, your eyes are not bad. This is in Portuguese, but I'm gonna show you a really cool trick that I do pretty often. I can just go in the browser and I can hit translate, and then there you go. Now you can go ahead and read Wilson's blog post. But go ahead and feel free to check this out. He goes through setting up the different configurations for PubSub, and I believe he's constructing a .NET application that he go ahead and publishes to Azure Container Apps. So definitely go ahead and make sure you check that out. And then also Vladimir's been working on this really interesting series. This is part 3 of the series where he talks about building cloud native services with Dapr and Go inside of Kubernetes. I don't know how much longer the series is going to go on for, but the first 2 were pretty good. So if you've been following along with the series, make sure you check out this next part of it as he continues to evolve this application that he is building. And as always, we're going to take these links. We're going to make sure they're in the show notes, and we also post them over to the Show and Shell channel that's inside of Discord as well. So if you want to get the links, we will share them out so everyone could have them. In terms of video, we have a couple of new Dapr videos that are out in the wild. Myself, Mark, and Matteo were at different conferences over the last couple of weeks, and all talking about just different ways to use Dapr. As you can see, Mark did one, Dapr in practice, and Matteo did one talking about Dapr crafting and improving your developer experience and so on. So if you want to check these out, these are also on YouTube, fully available. Anyone could go ahead and take a look and check them out. And hopefully you all enjoy them. And again, as we kind of look through what else is happening throughout LinkedIn and Twitter and social media, again, a whole lot of buzz about folks talking about Dapr and Spring Boot with Java, and different conferences and stuff like that the team has been participating in. Yeah, so much social media stuff around that. Again, if you're one of the folks that are new to us here on the Dapr community call, we like to give away badges. That seems to be one of the things that we do. So if you're interested in getting some of our community badges, we give away badges for things like helping contribute to the docs or giving Dapr presentations and things like that of that nature. So head over to those links below, and if you're interested in collecting badges, we collect them like we collect Pokemon. If you're interested in collecting badges, feel free to head over and learn how your contributions to Dapr, to the Dapr project, whether it be presentations or blog posts or updating our documentation, can earn you some of these really cool badges that we have. And with that being said, we do have one more badge. This is a free community supporter badge. So just by you being here, you can go ahead and scan that QR code that's on the right side of your screen right now. And if you don't have this one yet, you can go ahead and get yourself a Dapr community supporter badge. And with that being said, that's it pretty much for our community call for today. We do these every 2 weeks. So if folks are interested in presenting anything, talking about anything, or maybe you just want to come and have some questions answered, feel free to join us every other week here. We stream live to YouTube, Twitter, and also around LinkedIn. And like I always mentioned before, feel free to come and engage with the team over on Discord, on GitHub and Twitter, and all the social media things that you can find people on. But with that being said, thank you all so much for joining us. We really appreciate you. And this has been the end to our this week's Dapr community call. So thank you all again, and we'll see you all later.
Cheers, everyone.